All right, so I just wanted to quickly go through kind of a fundamental business building exercise specifically for bootstrap businesses or businesses that are just getting started, specifically smaller teams, under resourced teams, teams that have yet to find product market fit, teams that are just coming together, teams that are trying to realistically figure out how to get to some level of traction and then get going. Sometimes that means that you've already raised money, but you've yet to be a business, right? So this is kind of a thought process prior to figuring out exactly who does what, when, why, and how to get to what outcomes in a way that's more repeatable, right? Or stabilized. When you're not there, you're typically here. And where here is where things start. And the goal is to be able to align really, really fast with all stakeholders, because this is the point in time in which most teams feel adrift, right? Prior to knowing exactly who's doing what, when, why, how, prior to having a product market fit, prior to having any level of traction, everything is full ambiguity. Everything is up in the air. Everything is uncertain. Everything is gray space, right? Because quite by literal definition, nobody knows what to do, when, why, how, what, right? So it's being worked through. And the bigger the team, the harder this is, because this is a individual thing, right? In order for the team to be strong, each individual contributor on the team needs to be tackling this and needs to take personal responsibility. So for a smaller team or an earlier stage team or a team that's yet to figure out the who doing what, why, and how, right, to get to what outcomes, the things that get to traction, the repeatable processes, until that's figured out, it's much easier to keep it as a smaller team, because it's difficult to do this with a lot of people, because each person needs to play their part. Each person needs to act as a founder, right? Each person needs to take extreme levels of ownership and get to a level of clarity to be able to get past the ambiguity as quickly, as fast as possible, right? As tight as possible. It's really kind of like an elite force. It's like an elite task force to be able to do this. And it's also very much so hard to navigate unless every person on the team has the right perspective and they know what's going on and the why around that, because it's not common, right? To be at this stage of a business where it's not clear of what's going on and you're trying to figure it out. Not too many people have experience ever being there, and even fewer people in life, period, have experience actually navigating through those waters successfully, right? Statistically speaking, most folks come into an organization as an employee, or most folks come into an organization after this stage has been worked through. Very few people even get a business to this point. So by definition, most folks are employees. So most folks come in after this is figured out. So thus the experience level navigating these waters is really low, which makes it uncertain and uncomfortable. Folks don't really necessarily know how to navigate these waters because they don't do it, right? Very seldomly is that the case. The second level of that are the folks that do navigate these waters or have navigated these waters, typically founders, founding teams, etc. Statistically speaking, most fail, right? So statistically speaking, very few navigate these waters successfully and get it to where it needs to be, right? So for those reasons, there's a high probability that folks don't know necessarily what to do or what perspective and approach to take or what's exactly going on at this moment of time in the business, because it is just a moment in time. It too shall pass, right? This is the moment in time in which you're coming to market. You have an idea. You're trying to get processes in place. You're trying to validate demand. You're trying to get to a level of traction. You're trying to get the right people into the right roles with the right processes to do the right things at the right time with the right resources to get to the right outcomes. You're trying to figure all of that stuff out. The name of the game here is to do it as quickly as possible, as tight as possible, as simple as possible, right? And it really is a team sport. It really requires everybody to be aggressively aligned with what is going on and why, and then doing their own individual part to be a team and a whole to move it forward, right? I'm going to take us through a quick high level perspective of what this typically looks like. I'm going to talk about it from the perspective of a founder or somebody who is setting off on this journey and the responsibilities there. And then I'm also going to take the perspective of the team members, the other side of the table, and I'm hopefully going to bring everybody together into one side of the table, one team, one unit with a why, right? So top down thought process, that's typically the founder, right? So typically that's somebody who's like, hey, I want to launch a business. I want to build a business. I have a vision. I have a problem I want to solve. I have a footprint I want to leave in this world, right? I have a strong why, right? So typically somebody's getting it going. Somebody's starting the party, right? Somebody's willing to put their house up to invite other people in to ruin it perhaps, right? But so that everybody, hopefully, if done well, has a very good time and some great memories, right? So somebody has to be that person. It's typically the founder. And that person is massively consumed with the big picture. That person is not necessarily consumed as much with the day-to-day of who needs to do what, like the details of the day-to-day executions, because it's a big picture shift, right? It's not what it's not, is it Doritos or pretzels in the bowl, right? Or what balloons are being hung. It's, hey, do we have a bowl, right? Is there a table set up? Do we have somebody that's manning the refreshments, right? It's big picture to make the party happen, and it's all consuming of everything in the whole. And then over time, you're bringing people in to get to the specificity, to the details, to the outcomes. And a big part of who you bring in is aligned into that need. A need for somebody who's founding, you really need to find and surround yourself with people who understand we need to specialize and complement and execute, right, into the whole, into the picture. On the founding team side, everybody should really have a founder mentality, right? It's just like a really elite level of executive team at the C level. You have a chief revenue officer, chief operating officer, chief financial officer, chief technology officer, right? Everybody has their specializations, which they're the best at. They have ownership over that section. But as a C level, they have ownership over the whole organization. And they all report around the big picture understanding, right? Making sure it's a big picture, because you need a complete vehicle, right? You don't drive down the road with 3 tires, right? You need 4 tires, a complete vehicle for that thing to go, for everybody to get to where they need to be. On an executive level, on a founding team level, on, right, everybody involved, everybody knows it needs to be complete. So everybody on the founding team needs to have a big picture, a full company perspective, and then be able to specialize in terms of their area of excellence, right? Get to operational excellence in their area, make their area the best, but then have at least enough of an understanding to say, hey, I'm doing my thing over here, but like, why is that not working over there? Because without that, we only have 3 tires and we're not getting anywhere, right? So you need that level of levity, but still specialization, right? All of that then needs to be able to be kind of facilitated and corralled by the driver or the CEO, the founder, et cetera, right? Everything starts typically with the top-down thought process, all consuming, because that's the business building. That's quite literally the inception of the idea. It's what is going on. It's literally manifesting something from nothing to something. And then once it's something, then you're actually building a business, right? So then it's actually like, I have this picture of a house that I want to build. Now let me put it on blueprints. Now let me go get the actual resources and supplies. Now let me hire the people. Now let me fund and finance. Now let me put it together. Now let me decorate it. Now let me live in it, right? And it's steps, and it's a conceptual process, right? It's a process to actually conceive and bring something into existence. And it's a lot, right? That's why you really need to find the right people to complement you in that journey as a founder. And a founding team is probably the most important thing you could build, right? So you're thinking about, like, what is the business? What are the parts of the business? What people do we need? What are the objectives of everybody? What actions? What outcomes, right? You're working through that. The way to get there is to say, hey, what's the vision, purpose, mission, right? So is there a vision, purpose, mission? If so, awesome. If not, the founder has to get onto a vision, purpose, mission to make sure that's clear. And it needs to be a vision, purpose, mission that is aligned in a way to have a reason, a why to exist, and then something that everybody else can rally around, right? A big enough why for people to want to be a part of it, right? On a selfish level, as well as like a selfishist level, right? Like societal, like, does this matter? Am I doing something with my life? Right? So that needs to be very clear, and that's like foundational. But then from that vision, purpose, mission, you need a focus. And the focus is really strategy. Folks don't typically understand that strategy is not pie in the sky. Strategy is how do you take that vision, purpose, mission, and then strategize, right? A focus where you can align all of your limited resources into one place to then set goals, right? Because you can do anything, but you can't do everything. So you need to be able to focus and set all of your limited resources into the best possible place. Setting strategy and focus is one of the hardest possible things for an early stage business, because many early stage businesses have the optionality of doing a number of things, right? So A, there's optionality. B, there's that self-doubt, right? You don't know what you don't know, and you also don't know what works yet, right? You're trying to figure it out. C, you also have other people involved, and you're trying to align. Realistically, an organization is only as great as its people. So even if like one strategy is a better strategy on paper, the one that actually is the best for the organization is the one that's the best for the team, because it's the team that needs to execute a strategy. So you really need to take a team perspective in terms of deciding on the strategy, and then you allocate and you assign goals. So you fix the strategy to suit the people, right? Because people make great companies. Then you set clear goals for those people to pursue. All right, this is why we're doing this, because we're the best at this, right? This ties into our vision, purpose, mission for these reasons. This is what we need to achieve, right? Are we all on the same page? If yes, then you move forward to the how, right? So we need to hit this goal. How are we actually doing that? Like, what are the actual actions or processes, right? What is the activity that a human body needs to take? What needs to be manifested, right? Manufactured in this universe for this idea to then become a reality? How do you go from a blueprint to a framed design of the house to then walls and a roof that you can decorate and then live in, right? What actions do those people need to take? And then do you have the right people in seat, right? Do you have all of the right people? Are you missing some folks? Is everybody aligned into the right things for the right reasons? And I'll jump into how you can figure that out pretty quickly without having to kind of guess, right? Because fast forward videotape, if you do this enough, it's really it's easy to read the room, to start to read the room and to understand and identify they're not just actions, but also inactions, right? Where folks are, right? And then the final thing that you need to figure out is the product. That's when so once you get all those foundational things in place, then you're just constantly consumed by product and customer, and you're out of your way. That's how you get out of your way. A lot of companies are in their own way. A lot of teams are in their own way because it's so difficult to get the first handful of things right, to then simplify to the point where it works and there's harmony, so that you could just be super customer centric, customer focused, outcome centric. Because the moment in time that people are aligned appropriately and you have a strong team and everybody does have a clarity in terms of like, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? And who's responsible for what, and why the big picture, how the whole big picture comes to play, and why your individual role matters and why everyone else's role matters. Once you get out of the way of that, you can just focus on the outcomes. And it's not necessarily what do I need to do? It becomes, I know what I need to do. I'm doing it. Are we getting the results and why? And all you become consumed with is, are we getting the results and why? You're not thinking or getting caught up with, what do I need to do? Or is this person doing that? That's how you get out of your own way as a team, right? Litmus test for testing whether or not you're ready to operate. It's, do these things exist, right? And is everything documented? If you can go one place and everything is there, that should be good enough. It doesn't need to be this perfect operating system, or it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to exist, and then it be existing and in form documented in one place that everybody can go to and reference. That could be a Google Doc, that could be a spreadsheet, that could be a Notion, an operating system, or anything else in the world, right? It just needs to exist and be in one place. Then you need a cadence of communication. This needs to be designed and agreed upon by the team. So the people on the team need to say, hey, these are the things that I'm responsible for. This is how we're operating. This is how we're communicating. And this is how we're providing each other with communication loops. Meaning, I'm going to send things out there. I need to make sure and know the fact that you're receiving it and you're getting the right message. So the loop, the communication loop, is critically important. If you can't define a communication loop with your team and have a working communication loop, people are going to flake. People are going to get confused. People are going to get disgruntled. It's just not going to work out. Tight communications around a clear goal and everything else working, where you're not in your way, you're out of your way, and you're focused on the customer. That tied with communication loops means a high performance team. Things just tend to move forward fast, right? Communication is typically the thing that breaks down, once this stuff most folks don't ever get this stuff in order, right? The foundational things. If these things exist, typically it's at the communication breakdown where things fall apart and companies fail. If you can get to a point where there's clean communication, then the next problem is, can we proactively identify constraints and remove constraints for ourselves selfishly and for other people around us selflessly? So selfishly, the company always has what it needs to succeed. We're removing constraints out of our way. We're getting the resources. We're getting our questions answered proactively, right? We're moving things forward. If there's no friction, we're just moving forward into throughput, right? If there's good, clean communication and everybody knows what to do, then you're just focused on what's not working, getting what's not working out or what you need in, and then things work, right? So this is like a top-down company building perspective and approach. Now, that's from like a founder, ideally a seasoned founder. It takes somebody who's done it a couple of times to just even be able to communicate this. Or if if you've consulted or worked with organizations and you get them through. The problem with consulting and consulting alone is you lose the practicality of the hands-on. Like, what is it really like to do this stuff? And what's it like to be in the trenches? And that's why it really does take practical experience to be able to identify it, communicate it, and also resolve it and move it forward, right? The litmus test is, can you talk about it from the other side of the table? A lot of advisors and consultants, they can talk about this business building process, right? But they lose context of the other side of the table, the people who are receiving it, the bottom up process, the people who now need to get to outcomes, and like the perspective shift, because it's way different to have a perspective top down than it is to have a perspective bottom up. Again, I'm going to recap where I started the conversation. Bottom up, most people do not have the experience navigating the waters of an early stage company, let alone the experience navigating it successfully. It is quite literally the most turbulent time of business. It is quite literally like driving a boat into a hurricane. You need to be a really seasoned captain and a really experienced team to navigate that choppy water in a very tight, cohesive, safe manner to mitigate risk. Otherwise, you're just leaving it to luck, and there's a good chance a lot of people will go overboard. The boat will break, right? Everybody sinks and drowns, right? It's just the fact of the matter. Like, most folks are employees most of their lives. If you're an employee someplace, you're not dealing with this stuff. It's not high on your experience level or perspective, right? Importance of perspective. And even if you've been in the startup game or the early stage game or the business game or whatever it is, most businesses fail. So it's typically luck that gets companies and teams through this, or a lot of capital and funding to be able to like navigate through the choppy waters. Like, if you got a big cruise liner, you're likely to get through the hurricane than if you're in a little schooner, right? Like a little boat, a little skiff, right? So better resourced companies can navigate those choppy waters faster. But a good, strong team, an experienced team with a tight team can also do it. Another approach is a patient team, right? But you just got to navigate these choppy waters and understand the situation and approach it appropriately. So, given the fact that most folks don't have that experience or perspective, you got to understand where people are coming from and you got to meet them there. Most people, they get this level of like, most folks live in the selfish state. Most people just think about themselves, right? It's natural. It is what it is. And if I'm in a job or a role or I'm a company, my first focus is going to be, what do I need to do, right? Meanwhile, on the top down, notice how the first focus is what is the business? What is the whole? What is the entirety of everything? What's the full picture? In an individual contributor or a team member perspective, it's typically, what do I, in my sliver of this company, need to do? Most folks are also bred to be employees. It sounds bad, but it is what it is. And in an employee mentality, it's like, I need to get good at what I do, and I don't necessarily need to care about everything else. The more senior you go, the more you care. And again, at the C level, you care about everything. You're compensated and you're accountable for all of it, right? And if something doesn't go right, it's because there's somebody that's not paying attention and it falls back to you, right? Individual contributors, like, are you doing your thing? Founding team member, you got to get out of that mentality. You got to be a big picture thinker. The only way, or one of the ways, perhaps the best way to get to a big picture thinker is to get selfish and take care of yourself and get to operational excellence with your role, your responsibility, so that you can very quickly get selfless and start to care about everybody else, so that you can then get selfishist and really help, right? Not only am I doing my thing appropriately, but is Johnny or Jane doing his or her thing right? Do they have the resources? Do we all have a team? Are we all communicating well, right? So that you're living in the things that actually move the team forward and actually create value. That's the value creation, right? So for a team, a founding team, the faster you can get to the point where you're thinking selfishly is the faster that you can actually do value creation for a team, and the higher the probability you're going to navigate that hurricane and make it to the other side. The other side is the fishing, is the fields, the fields of plenty, right? Best fishing, the best everything in the world, everything's going to be amazing, right? Everybody wins. But you got to get through that choppy water. You got to do it together, and you got to do it as a team. You got to get out of your own way. And the best way to get out of your own way is to get into an aligned situation where you're elevating and helping everybody else achieve, where you're thinking about the whole. And the best way to get there is to get to the point where you're customer centric and customer concerned, customer obsessed as quickly as possible, right? Like, is everything working? Why or why not? Is the customer happy? Why or why not? And out of your own head, right? So bottom up, it's like, do I know what I need to do? Do I know what outcomes I'm responsible for? Do I know what actions I need to take to get that? Do I know what objectives we're working towards? I know my personal objectives, and then I'm aware of the whole kind of the team's objectives and the rest of the company's? Do I know who's doing what, right? Let alone, like, first it's like, do I know what's going on? But then do I actually know the person who's responsible for it and then how they're doing it? Right? Because if I don't, then how can I help? Right? Do I know all of the parts that need to be running so that we have 4 tires instead of 3? Or instead of a flat tire? Right? Am I in tune with the vehicle that I'm in? Right? Do I know the vision, purpose, mission? Am I actually motivated towards it? Am I helping achieve it? Are we going forward with it as a team? Do we have communication loops that are saying yes versus, hey, there's things that we need to fix? Right? That's a bottom-up thought process. And it starts with selfish, and then it ends with selfishist, right? And you got to work through it, and you got to do it as aggressively as possible. And the way to get there, the steps to get there as an individual contributor on a founding team, is to self-delegate, right? Now, this is important because, again, most folks don't have experience navigating these waters. So very few people would know to go do this. And the key here is it's self-delegation. It's self-delegation into activation. So you're activating yourself by saying, hey, I need to do these things. Now, if you don't know you need to do these things, then you never will. And if you don't, you'll never be selfish to get selfish-ist, right? So you need to know that you need to do it, and then you need to know how to do it. And then you need to make sure that the rest of the company is in a position where you can. So the reason why this is important to self-delegate is because it becomes a system of checks and balance against everybody else in the company and the company as a whole, the founder, the CEO, right? Meaning, if I'm going to self-delegate my role responsibility, a simple way to do that is to go to the organizational documentation, like where all of this stuff is, vision, purpose, mission, focus, goals, process, people, product, go to where it's centrally located and then organize it for myself and create my own version of it just for me. Super selfish. I'm going to map out everything I need to do and why, and I'm going to pull it from there. And the reason why is if I delegate to do it and it doesn't exist, I'm in a bad company and I either need to decide to get out or I need to decide, hey, let me flag this, right? If you're a serial founder or a serial team member, you know, in doing that, you can put accountabilities on the whole company and the team, right? If it does exist, you can then do a quality assurance. How good is this stuff? Is it documented and well thought through? Is it to the point where I could take it and actually run with it? If not, flag it, right? Move it forward. If I can get to the point where I got everything that I need, I should be able to do my stuff now. Now the next step is like, can I track my stuff for performance optimization? You need to track it to improve it. It's like if you're dieting or if you're working out, right? You go to the gym, you track your reps, you track your weight, right? And then you benchmark it to improve. It's not because you're being held accountable or micromanaged. It's because you care. You care about yourself and you care about the journey that you're on and the outcomes that you want. So you proactively self-delegate. If that stuff doesn't exist for the whole company, that's a red flag, right? If it doesn't exist for you and it doesn't exist for somebody else, you could end up doing it for yourself, but then Sally Sue's not doing it. And is she doing it? Is it a complete vehicle? So you want to get into this in the point of an organizational perspective. So you want to have something simple like what's on the left side of this sheet, or if you go a little bit deeper, I'm hoping that this shows and you can get to more of a line itemed tracker for the whole company. This is a great opportunity to put accountability onto the founder, the COO, like the person who's like properly, responsible for this for the organization, and then to take ownership of it for yourself. And in doing so, you're clarifying the fact that your processes you took away, it's a comms loop. It's an opportunity for a comms loop. This is what I understand me to be responsible for. This is how I understand to do it. It's also an opportunity to flag. I don't have the resources. I don't know how to do it, right? So then that gets you to this next step. The next step is to go back into your itemized personal process and make the I don't know statements, right? I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to get that process done, right? I don't know who that is. I don't know what that tool is. I don't even have that tool, right? You need to make sure that you are in a position to actually execute. After that's the case and you take care of yourself, now you could get selfless and start to think about everybody else. And like if you're doing a good cadence of communication, you want to have a big picture view of everybody because it's not about you anymore. It's more about if I'm not doing what I need to do, I need to get selfish and fix that. But then it's like I need to listen to what everybody else is doing and ask questions. Why isn't that happening? Why aren't we hitting that outcome? What's going on? What's in the way? And that's how you get to this, again, this litmus test on the left side, top down. That's how you get to that level of excellence. You're using your cadence of communication. And you get into the excellence to remove constraints. And if you can have a tightly aligned team that can communicate well and remove constraints for each other, unless your product really sucks, unless you have really poor product market fit and your customer obsessed, but your customers are not obsessed with you, unless something's wrong, which you want to know fast because you either change it or you get out of that business. If you have a remotely good product to a product market fit, you will be a simple, profitable team, right? Maybe not profitable, but it will work and you will move things forward, right? So you just got to do these things. These are individual self-delegated responsibilities that you do actively and proactively as an independent individual on a founding team. And honestly, you should do this on any team, right? If you want to be a top performer, if you want to be an elite player, if you want to be on an elite team and hold people to accountabilities, do for yourself, do for others, do this stuff because it moves things forward and it leverages the need for these resources. If this isn't happening, right? So if you have a team and this stuff is not happening, if you are a founder or a CEO and you have a team of other people, and you today, the first question you need to ask, right? Because maybe it's the first time you're navigating these waters. First thing you ask, did you provide this? Did you execute totally on this top down? Does this exist? If no, you got work to do. Go put in the hard work and get it done. If yes, have you communicated expectations? Right? Have you properly and appropriately communicated to other people what to do, what expectations are? If no, you need to do that. However, if yes, if you can answer yes, meaning it's been communicated in writing, it's been communicated in communication with communication loops, you got feedback of yes, no, I know what I'm responsible for and I know everything's good. If that's the case, and then you're paying attention and your people on your team are not doing these things, they're not proactively self-delegating. It doesn't have to be this exactly, right? This is just a version for my communication and my experience. This is the simplest possible version. It works. I know that it works. It doesn't have to be this exactly. But if your people aren't doing some variation of this proactively, the first thing that you got to acknowledge is like, my folks may have an extreme level, or not even extreme level. They may just have a lack of experience, right? Or maybe they forget. Maybe they got some experience, but it was 10 years ago and they just forget. They're lazy or whatever the case, they're slipping, right? If your team's slipping or they're not doing it, the first thing you have to do is go into education mode. You have to teach, train, equipped. You have to empower, right? Because you made decisions around these people, ideally, hopefully for the right reasons, right? There's a whole step of things and decisions that go into getting to this moment in time, right? So hopefully you made the right calls from the beginning and you further invest, you double down. But you need to pay attention to these things and you need to be proactive into it. Because if you're a little bit late to the game, it may end up being one of these other things, right? So the first thing is like, hey, do you know to do this? It's okay if you don't. It's 100% okay, totally cool, right? But we got to do this and this is why. And you communicate the why, you sell the why, right? If they're like, I get it, yeah, no, cool. And then you look for a communication loop, right? If they say that they get it and then they don't do it, then you go to the next thing. And it's like, is there a constraint in the way on the clarity of like what the F you're supposed to do, right? Like, are you confused with what it is, right? Like, was our communication loop not a clear loop? Like, is it too complicated? Am I asking too much of you, right? You're willing to do 3 things, but I'm asking 10. So you're just not going to do anything at all, right? Like, is it too complicated? Is it too confusing? Like, it makes sense to me because I obsessed over it, but does it not make sense to you? Is it like, maybe it's outside of your experience or whatever it is? It's 100% okay. It is what it is. Let's figure it out. Is there other things that are just in the way? I don't have the time for it. I don't have the resources for it. I'm not comfortable being uncomfortable and saying I don't know, right? It's like personal things, right? Which then gets you to the next level of talk track, which is like, is there a personal thing? And the first personal thing is typically a motivation thing, right? Like, is there a motivational issue? Are you not motivated to do this? And the motivational issue typically tends to be on a personal why. So it's like people either do things because they're personally motivated to do it. Like, folks will go and hike up a mountain without getting paid, right? That's crazy exertion. That's like a ton of work. It's like crazy activity, right? But they'll do it for fun, right? So like people do things just because they want to. If it aligns with their why, they're willing to. And then a next level, typically when things become work, they need compensation. So if people are perceiving this as work, there's probably something wrong, because you don't want people on your founding team that perceive it to be work. You want people on your founding team that passionately want to pursue this why, and they're making a choice that this is the best vehicle to be in to do it. And I've always wanted to do this with my life. This is a problem I've always wanted to solve. I never really knew how. I know that on this vehicle, in this team, with all of these resources, I have a better chance of experiencing it and doing it than I do on my own. So that is why I'm here. That's the type of people that you want on your founding team. You don't want folks that are here for a paycheck. Money is a short-term motivator, and you don't want a single person on your founding team that's there for money. That is like a zero starter, right? So you got to have that personal why conversation. And like, if you didn't do a good job recruiting, right? If you didn't look for folks and really understand like their why and get the time to know them and like make sure that it's the right type of a fit and that they're long-term players, then you messed up as a founder, right? Or it's a conversation and you just kind of got to remind people, because again, most folks never navigate these waters, and it's really easy to lose track, right? We've all been there. Like you go through something really hard in life and it's like, it's easy to get down and be like, forget things and go into despair and stuff like that. We're all people, right? We're all people. We all have emotions. Like we're all going through the same thing. Sometimes you just need to be reminded, like, hey, guy, like this is cool and like it will work. We need to do these things and you're doing it for a reason. And it's not for me, it's for you, right? And if that's changed, that's cool. Let's have a conversation. But if it hasn't, let's just remember that and get it done, right? And it's a conversation. And then the final thing that you got to get through, right? So like if you know the why is still good, then it becomes a deeper thing on a personal level, typically. And it's like there's some personal hang up. And for most folks going through something the first time on a founding team, nothing's like known, right? So it's a whole world of like known unknowns. It's very vague. It's like, again, you're in the storm. People get scared in storms, right? Like if it's your first time at sea, you do not want to be in a hurricane. You are going to shit your pants, right? You're not going to step foot away from that rope, right? You're definitely not going to walk the deck and then go do some shit, right? So you got to know that. And it's okay to be afraid, right? But you got to admit it, and then you got to get past it, because you got to get to make it through to the other side. Everybody's got to play their part. You can't let fear be a hang up, or subconsciously like a fear of looking stupid, a fear of not knowing what to do, a fear of being comfortable, being uncomfortable, right? Some sort of personal limitation. So you gotta work with the person and you gotta address it and say, hey, is this the problem? Because if it is, it should not be a problem. It's totally cool. Like it's not a big deal. Let's all get naked, right? Everybody's smelt a bad fart every now and then. Like it is what it is. Like it's not a big deal. Like let's just do this. Can we do this? You gotta have that conversation. Outside of that, maybe it's something else. I don't know. But typically, I found that if you work through this list, right? So the first list is like lack of experience. You got to teach, train, equipped, right? Then it's lack of clarity or understanding, or there's like you're not doing a good job communicating, or there's something in the way, or you haven't done a good job. These first couple of things is on you as a founder. Then you get into the motivation, which is also you as a founder, right? Because you're selling the why, right? But it's got to be clear and you got to remind. And then it's maybe a personal thing and you just got to help and support. But if you're a good person and you're able to support folks through this journey, and you chose the right people, and then they take the action because they are the right people. They take the action because they're the right people. What makes them the right people is that they take the action. And it's self-delegated action once they know what that action is. They take the action, they go through the bottom up, they get themselves comfortable, and then everybody is consumed. After you work through this process, the moment in time that you have a tight founding team is the moment in time everybody is top-down focused on customer experience, right? That's where I'm going to leave it. Hopefully this landed somewhere. Hopefully this was valuable content. I enjoyed making this content. I'm super passionate about it, right? It really matters. It really, really, really matters. And for all of the reasons and hopefully more, I appreciate you for watching this. And until next time, I'll talk to you soon.